Welcome to the Abundant Vision Fundraising Podcast. Whether you are a seasoned professional or a first-time fundraiser, we have the advice you need to take your next step toward major gift mastery. I'm your host, Tom Dauber, President of Abundant Vision Philanthropic Consulting. Today I want to talk about something that I've had a lot of success, so I know a little bit about, but something also that I find is a common struggle for those of us in leadership positions in nonprofits. And whether you are a fundraising manager, like a senior director of development or a chief development officer, or whether you're a CEO of a small nonprofit, you're probably going to find yourself in a case where you need to persuade your board or whoever else manages you when you need more fundraisers. So how do you do that? Well, and let me add this, not just fundraisers, but I'd say development or advancement staff. So that would include, stewardship officers, that could include administrative assistants, that could include program managers, grant writers, any number of things like that. It's frequent that I encounter people who are at organizations that have lots of potential, but they don't have all the staff to fully take advantage of the opportunity they have in front of them. So let's talk a little bit about that. First off, and this goes for fundraising, and this goes for fundraisers and nonprofit leaders as well, but scarcity mindset is a real problem. What I mean is if you owned a for-profit business and I said to you, hey, if you'll spend $250,000, I will get you $2.5 million in profit. A CEO of a for-profit company is going to take that deal all day long. However, it's not uncommon for nonprofit leaders or board members even to look at an opportunity to make $250,000 or to make $1 million. That would only cost them 10, 20% of that amount, either in the salary of someone or maybe in some consulting to help them. And they'll turn that down all the time. And really, when you analyze why, it really does come down to a scarcity mindset. They're thinking to themselves, oh my goodness, we could never raise that much money. This is an expense we can't afford. Well, I'll tell you, it's an expense that you can't afford to be without. That's really my observation. But why is that? Why is spending money on fundraising so scary that we don't do it? What is the problem with fundraising? Well, part one of this is that accountants, sometimes board members, COOs, CFOs, a lot of times they don't understand that a fundraiser and even a fundraising consultant is a revenue generator, not a cost center, right? When we look at our budget, a lot of times fiscal individuals, especially in situations where the money being raised is not discretionary. Let's say a lot of it's going to scholarship or other things, right? They're going to look at that fundraiser as someone who costs them $80,000 or $100,000. Doing the math to see that, oh yeah, so if this fundraiser raises money for a facilities repair and improvements. So if they raise $500,000 for that, right? That's $500,000 that doesn't have to come out of my general budget. They don't see that. And so to them, a fundraiser is simply going to be somebody else costing them money. And really, there's a lot of value. If you take the time to really look at it closely, there's a lot of value that comes from fundraisers. And many times it's not even stuff that a lot of times the benefits of the fundraiser it goes a lot more deep than how much money they're raising for you. For example, a fundraiser may fail to get some corporate gift, right? But in the process of trying to negotiate and explore that opportunity, they may build a relationship that leads to other types of business opportunities. They might bring internships into your program at your school, for example, that adds value to your students and allows you to actually attract more students. Or they may be able to leverage that gift into discounted goods, or even gifts in kind that you may not be counting because they're not dollars, right? So there are lots of things, including goodwill. If you've got a good fundraiser who's out on the road a lot, talking to your constituents, and if they're working concert with your CEO to really promote a message, they can generate a lot of goodwill for your organization in ways that are really more powerful than standard marketing. As a fundraiser, if I were to see someone, I could personally make the case as to why a new leader was a great fit for the job. And I could answer a lot of questions that maybe otherwise skeptical outsiders might raise. And for each person you do that, there's a ripple effect because they're talking with their friends. They're talking with their peers and colleagues saying, oh my gosh, you won't believe somebody from this organization actually came over and they told me these things, and they're hearing it direct from the organization. So there's a lot of power in it. So there's a lot of value to the work fundraisers do, even beyond fundraising. But like I said, fundraising does increase revenue. And so you really shouldn't be looking at them as cost centers. You really ought to be looking at them as profit centers, right? So the next thing to think about is that every opportunity you miss costs your organization something. You're leaving money on the table. Let's say you're at an organization and let's say you only have 1,000 constituents or 2,000 constituents, right? Well, I don't know what percentage of them are giving. I'm guessing it's a smaller number, right? Maybe 20% or so. But for each one of them that you don't ask, you're actually losing a bit of money. Let's say you have a single fundraiser, or let's say you have a CEO who's carrying the bulk of the fundraising work, right? Well, obviously, if you're doing that in addition to being the CEO, you're certainly going to be overextended. You're certainly not going to be able to put the time into relationships that you need to keep them strong. I mean, when I think about a major gift prospect under management by a professional, my expectation would be that major gift prospect, that potential major gift donor, would be having meaningful contact with the organization that moves the relationship forward about once a quarter. So about 3 to 4 times a year, really. Now, when I think about the average CEO who's managing a whole team of people, maybe has a fundraiser that's reporting to them, putting out fires, trying to make sure that the mission of the organization moves forward, many of those people really only have time to see a donor a couple times a year. Well, just do the math on that. If I'm only seeing a donor once or twice a year, well, what am I doing? Well, I'm probably being the guy or the gal who only shows up when I need something. I'm not deepening the relationship with them. I'm treating them like an ATM. So I'm not probably spending enough time with them to build the relationship in a way that's going to lead to deeper investment and further engagement. Tom Dauber here for Abundant Vision Philanthropic Consulting. Fundraising can be hard work, and it can be hard to mentally get into the place you need to be in order to see new opportunities. Everyone struggles with it. We are like the fish in the fishbowl who just can't see the water they're swimming in. That's when having outside expertise comes in handy. For 25 years, I've been helping nonprofits analyze challenges, discover new ways forward, and develop clear plans that lead to greater fundraising revenues. Now I am available to help your organization develop the abundant vision it needs to inspire new levels of philanthropy at your nonprofit as well. Check out abundantvision.net to start your journey toward greater fundraising success today. Now, back to the show. So if that's how I'm treating my best relationships, my current relationships, well, then certainly I'm not discovering new opportunities. Who has time for that? And frankly, prospecting work is hard. It takes a lot of time, right? So if you have a limited number of personnel hours focused on fundraising, well, then you're not going to be bringing in the revenue that you need to increase your budget and grow the mission of your organization. Because what you want to be doing is fully leveraging the giving potential of your constituency. And that takes time and focus and strategy. Now, it can be done part-time. And if you have a coach like me, for example, I can help you do that. That's something that I do professionally. And if you can't afford a full-time fundraiser, I could probably get you to the point where you could. But it's going to take some time really to focus in on that. So the thing with major gifts is that they're not transactional. I mean, when you think about what a major gift is, right? It's a gift oftentimes that's really coming from the accumulated wealth of the individual. This is not an annual gift that's made out of my annual income. This isn't, oh, I've got an annual budget for giving, and once a year I give to your organization. Those gifts are great. And those gifts from very wealthy individuals can be very, very large. I'm not dissing those types of gifts at all. But if somebody, even if they're giving you $1 million a year, and that's just part of their annual budget, for them, that's an annual gift. That's not a major gift, right? If you want to be able to tap the illiquid wealth, for example, or the accumulated wealth over time of a donor, a lot of times this would be non-cash. This might be appreciated stock, or it might be a percentage of an estate. It could be any number of things. But it really takes trust. It takes trust to get there. And back to what I was saying about fundraisers being kind of marketers for your message. If your fundraiser is out meeting with people, spending time, building relationship with your organization, or building relationships with the donor on behalf of your organization, that's what you're doing, is you're building trust. And it's that type of trust that lets you move from the annual gift, or even the very large annual gift, into the transformational gift that's really going to make your organization go to the next level of service in whatever field they're in. The other thing with the type of trust that's built with one-on-one interaction and relationships, right, is that it helps prevent donor attrition. I was looking at some numbers the other day. 40%, 45% is the average retention rate in the nonprofit world in the US. That means you're losing 55, 60% of your donors every year. That's expensive because it costs far more to get new donors than it does to keep the ones that you have. And the best way to keep the donors that you have is personal attention, trust building, and relationship building. And again, that's what fundraisers do for your organization. So if you're talking to your board chair, if you're talking to your CEO, you need to come to them, not just with the facts I'm sharing, but with real numbers to help them understand, okay, we may very well lose 60% of our donors next year, and 60 the next year, and the year after that. That would be the average thing, 55 to 60% each year in the US, right? If we want to keep them, if we want to grow our base, we need time and intentionality and focus on our donors to build the trust and to keep them engaged, right? And then you need to make some projections off of that. Like if we can reduce that, if we can increase our retention rate, well, what does that mean for our numbers? And making the case like that is how you do it. Now, on the HR side, when you think about people that are overworked, and there's a lot of my friends in the fundraising world, in the nonprofit world, who are really overworked, right? Well, we don't want that, because if people are overworked, the likelihood that they're going to leave goes way up. And what we want is fundraising staff stability so that those relationships are preserved and so that trust is maintained and donor confidence increases. Donors notice when you have turnover in your fundraising position. Donors notice when their development officer doesn't have time for them, doesn't get back with them. Frankly, that can be really offensive for donors. High-performing fundraising shops demonstrate consistency, professionalism, and follow-through. Burnout, turnover, communication gaps, they send the opposite message, and they can erode trust, especially amongst your top donors, because they're thinking, oh my gosh, here's another one. Here's another person walking through the revolving door and out the other. Why would I want to take the time to get to know them? Because I know they're going to be gone in a year. So there's opportunity cost when we don't aim enough resources at fundraising, not just in the people that we don't solicit, but in the trickle down unintended consequences that happen when we're overworked and we don't provide the level of customer service that our top donors expect and deserve, frankly. Now, most nonprofits, I would say, exist because they want to make impact. And they want that impact to grow. You don't start a nonprofit because you're like, maybe we'll get around to something. Maybe we'll do a few things that are good and help a couple people, but it's not really a big deal for us. No, they want strategic growth. Well, you can't have strategic growth without strategic investment. If you want to scale your impact, if you want to increase your impact, you've got to scale the support for fundraising. New programs, campaigns, geographic expansions, they require corresponding growth in fundraising capacity. If we're serious about vision, and my regular listeners will know I'm all about vision, we must equally be serious about resourcing the staff who will fund it. It is not enough, CEO, it is not enough, board chair, to say, fundraiser, go out and double our fundraising this year. It doesn't work like that. Depending on what part of the fundraising sector you're in, the nonprofit sector you're in, it's probably going to cost you about 20 cents for every $1 that you raise. In some sectors, I've seen it as low as 10 cents, but that seems a little low from my perspective. But let's say it's 10 cents. I'll just give you that, right? Well, if I'm spending $100,000 on fundraising, well, then it would be reasonable that I should expect $1 million in fundraising revenue, right? In that same vein, if I want to grow my fundraising to 2 million, and every $1 million organization would love to be at 2 million, it follows that I then need to increase my fundraising budget proportionally. I need to spend $200,000 a year if I want to raise 2 million. So unless you're ready to increase your fundraising investment, don't go telling your fundraisers that you need to radically increase the amount of money that they're raising. Now, I am making an assumption. I'm making an assumption that you've got good fundraisers who are properly trained, that work hard, and that are doing their job. In some cases, you can increase your fundraising simply by having better people or training your people better. Or, shameless plug here, hiring a good coach, somebody that can come in and work with your folks. If that isn't your skill as a manager to help coach fundraisers into success, I'm the guy for that. You can hire me, much less than $100,000, by the way. Just a fraction of that, really. But what I'm saying is that if you want to scale your impact, you've got to scale your support for fundraising. That's all the time we have today. But be sure to tune in next week to hear the next part of this exciting conversation. Now, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please be sure to subscribe and give us a 5-star rating on your podcast provider. I'm your host, Tom Dauber. Thank you for joining me as we journey together towards major gift mastery on the Abundant Vision Fundraising Podcast.